Hey everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Opening Tee Podcast. Maybe the first dual Opening Tee Podcast, as we have a 2-tournament week this week on the PGA Tour. I am your host for it, Jason Rousin. Find me on Twitter at DFSGolfer23. Or, of course, if you're an Osmo Plus member, find me in the Slack chat. I'm there quite a bit. Usually get to all of the questions by the end of the week, or normally by the end of the night if you message me. But if I miss it, I try and go back through my messages at the end of the week to get back to you. So, what we do in this Opening Tee Podcast, which is actually now sponsored by SuperDraft, the future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft exclusive game multiplier, which I happen to love. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want, to craft your own dream team. So for me, I can throw in Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Bryson DeChambeau, Xander Schauffele, Tiger Woods, all my favorites. That'd have been a great team this week. Not so much. They also have, of course, NFL, MLB, which will be coming up in a couple weeks, NBA, and NHL. Of course, if you haven't signed up, use promo code AWESOMO to get $20 super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. So head over to the App Store and download the SuperDraft app. No limits and more winning. So thanks to SuperDraft for sponsoring the show. And what we do in this is we go over the foursome of facts for the week from last week. Normally I include the European Tour, but they were off this week. I go over my highs and lows. Then I do a statistical review of the week. And I give you some fun things to end off the week with your not your average cut sweat segment, which mostly this week it's going to follow on the guys that missed the cut. Some incredible stories that'll be coming up there. After stats, then I go into this week, which this week it's a dual tournament, the WGC Mexico and the Puerto Rico Open. So we'll have two tournaments to break down. Main focus will be on the WGC Mexico, which of course most of the daily fantasy sites will be putting their big contest out. DraftKings did just release theirs. It looks like we've got $200,000 to first place for the $10 buy-in. $100,000 to first for the $400 buy-in, and $50,000 to first for the $44 buy-in. So some big ones out there for the WGC Mexico. I do expect DraftKings to put out a pretty solid contest slate for the Puerto Rico Open as well, so we'll cover that a little bit. Okay, let's head right now into my foursome of facts for the week. And with only one tournament, we got to start off with Adam Scott. His impressive ball striking, leading the field in greens and regulation for the week, and that statistic prevailed on a very difficult, fast golf course. And what's funny is Adam Scott hadn't played for about 8 weeks, but the last time he played, he won on a difficult, fast golf course. Now, granted, it was on the other side of the earth in Australia. Still, doesn't matter where you play in golf. Golf is the same on any continent, and the courses ended up being relatively similar. This also happens to be his favorite golf course on the PGA Tour and in America. He said that quite a bit. So he got it done, and now 2 starts in a row for him that he's got 2 wins, maybe setting up for a really big-time year. This was a big-time win, but we've always wondered when another major would come for a guy that's just got one of the best swings in the world and one of the better players, that's for sure. So something to keep an eye on. Okay, secondly, outside of Adam Scott's impressive ball striking and impressive iron play with the greens, off the tee was huge. Bryson DeChambeau I've highlighted quite a bit as just really progressed in the off the tee game this year. Him and Sung Kang, who's also had a fantastic year off the tee. I've talked about that a lot on the shows. Both of them notched top 5 finishes. Kang with a tie for second and Bryson a tie for 5th. So really finding those OTT off the tee games that are hot on courses where it's so important. We saw it this week. Really, really great. Really great to see that type of analysis pay off. Hopefully we can continue to do it, and we got 2 courses this week to analyze. Okay, Tiger continues to struggle at Riviera is the next bullet point. I mean, you guys, if you watched coverage, you heard it. If you didn't watch coverage, he actually finished in last. Quite a long time since I've seen that. But still, hey, he made the cut, so it's still a paycheck for Tiger Woods. Lastly, Max Homa's run of form is really impressive. I know he won the Wells Fargo last year, had quite a dip-off after that, but now has immersed himself, has become a social media star, and really become a star on the PGA Tour. A top 5 here at maybe not his home course, but certainly a course that he grew up playing a decent amount. And it's just really, it had a great number of support out there. So even with a bogey on 18, costing him a lot of money, probably like $300,000-$400,000, still he made a great paycheck and a top 5. So Max Homa, great week. Okay, now we go into my high and low for the week. Then we'll go off into the stat review and then move on to the next week. Okay, so my high and low for the week: Joaquin Niemann, Andrew Putnam, Matt Wolff, and Justin Thomas. My lows, no doubt about it. Bryson DeChambeau was my high. Maybe not so obvious. He was about 14%, but he was very impressive. Probably my high for the week. Rory over Rahm was impressive, but JT over Rahm was not impressive. For me, week long was terrible, but I was able to craft together a very good lineup for Sunday Showdown that ended up winning the secondary $33 and $10, good enough for a $5K payout there, and made the week a four-figure profit, which is always a good thing to see. That lineup didn't actually have Adam Scott in it, but it had all the other guys: DeChambeau, Sung Kang, and the one against the grain one that I wrote up in the Sunday Showdown article was Sam Burns. Sam Burns finished out after an eagle there, so he had over 40 points, and that really helped that lineup. Other than that, I had all the guys that were in the top 5, so a really good lineup there that helped me get to a positive week, so we'll always take one of those. All right, let's move into the stat review, where I go just over quickly the new age strokes gained statistics and match it up against some of the old statistics. So first is off the tee, and I had such a disparity between the strokes gained off the tee and driving accuracy this week, which we don't normally see. There's only one guy in the top 8 that matched, Taylor Gooch. So I went over to driving distance, and I found a few more matches. Sam Burns was number 1 in driving distance this week and finished 3rd in OTT. Taylor Gooch again showed up, and also there was one other. Oh, DeChambeau, of course. Sorry, yeah, DeChambeau. DeChambeau was 3rd in driving distance and 4th in off the tee. Sorry, 3rd in off the tee, 3rd in both. So a couple. So it looked like, as I mentioned, driving distance was more important this week. Okay, moving on to strokes gained on the approach and greens in regulation. We have a 3 crossover. So first on the approach, it was Kang, Morikawa, Scott, Cameron Tringale, Paul Casey, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Patrick Cantlay. Then on the greens in regulation, we already know about Scott. Then it was Schauffele, Homa, Hahn. So no crossovers yet. DeChambeau. But then we get Gooch, Cantlay, and Morikawa. So Cantlay and Morikawa, both greens in regulation high, and both strokes gained on the approach high. So no surprise to see those guys there. Lastly, putting in putts per GIR. Denny McCarthy was on both lists. Matt Kuchar, K.H. Lee, Scott Brown, John Rahm, Brian Stewart, Wyndham Clark, Siwoo Kim, and Joel Damon on the strokes gained putting side. For the putts per GIR, like I said, McCarthy was up there, Brian Stewart was up there, Wyndham Clark was up there, Scott Brown was up there. So a tremendous amount of crossover, which is no surprise. That's the one where we get the most crossover, the strokes gained putting in the putts per GIR. Okay, so lastly, I always like to go into birdies because it's, sometimes we get some outliers and we can get some, of course, we can get some looks for next week. But this one, because of how hard the course was playing, there's not much disparity. Had Adam Scott and Sung Kang at 21 each. Sung Kang actually threw out an eagle there. So certainly outplayed his, he came in tied for second, but he actually probably came very close to Adam Scott in terms of DraftKings points. Paul Casey at 19, as well as Patrick Reed. So Reed couldn't avoid the bogeys, which is too bad. Scott Brown, Danny McCarthy, and Brooks Koepka had 18. And then a bunch of guys at 17. Kuchar, Homa, Vaughn Taylor, Harold Varner, Brian Stewart, and Scotty Scheffler. Interesting. So Scotty Scheffler, I don't think he's playing next week. That's too bad. A lot of birdies this week. Okay, so I think that covers it for the review of the stats. Like I said, we're going to do the cut sweat segment right after this, and then we'll go into next week. So we will see you back in just 2 seconds as I pause to get a quick sip of water. Okay, moving on to our not your average cut set sweat. Jeez, I always mess that up a little bit. My apologies. Cut sweat segment where I go over some of the crazy cut sweat stories of the week. It's just some great content. I don't really expect you to pick anything up out of it per se in terms of value. I mean, certainly guys that miss the cut on the number are maybe guys that are close to form but not quite there, or might have had a bad hole that pushed them over the edge. So maybe in terms of value, you could look for that going to the next week. But this is more for fun. This week is a barrage of bad ones. Of course, with the bad, you always, of course, get the good. So I'll give you just a couple of good ones at the end here. But let's start off with one of the worst ones. It is Kevin Chappell. Chappell comes to the ninth hole at even par. The cut is going to be +1. So he just needs bogey or better. Not that bad. I mean, it seems like it should be easily attainable. It was the ninth hole, so not that hard. Maybe a little harder hole or on the harder side. But not by any stretch the most difficult hole on the golf course. In fact, it's playing this week. It's playing somewhere. I'm just looking it up right now to give you the exact stats here. Looks like it's playing somewhere in the middle. So anyways, hits the ball in the native area to the right side. Not that great. Ends up punching out and going just short of the bunker. He's got 38 feet to the hole, so less than 13 yards. And he skulls a bunker shot way long, 25 yards long, but still on the green. 80 feet away. So he's got an 81-footer for par. He's got to 2-putt to make the weekend, and he 4-putts for double. For triple. So it goes from even to +3. Easily missing the cut, obviously. One of the better, I won't say one of the better, but one of the more funnier stories that we have covered this year in this segment. All right, a couple more. Scott Stallings. Oh, man, this is a great one. This is, if you don't know this one already, man, what a story. So he shoots 42 on the front nine, going from -3 to +3. He added another bogey on the fourth hole to go to +7 for the day, +4 for the tournament. So +5 for the tournament, +7 for the day. So he started the day at -2. Apologies. He birdies the last 3 holes to get back to +2. Right when the cut looks like it's going to go back to +2, and nope, it stayed at +1. And Scott Stallings, what a brutal round to miss there. All right, a couple more. I'll call it basic ones. They're still terrible in nature, but more clear ones. Jim Furyk, for the second straight week on the 18th hole, needs par or better to make the weekend and could not do it. Couldn't get up and down from, I think it was around 33 yards in the fairway. Sepp Straka had to play the last 4 holes at even or better and played them at +1. Adam Long was in a very similar situation. He had to play them in +1 or better and couldn't, and bogeyed on the par 5 17th, so he played them in 2 over the last 4 holes. Joaquin Niemann couldn't get up and down from 29 feet, just left of the green on 18, missed a 12-footer for par to make it. Pebble Beach winner Nick Taylor missed a 6-footer to play the weekend and played the last 6 holes 3 over. Maybe he wanted a break and wanted to go spend some of his $1.3 million that he made, or somewhere around there. Ryan Armour needed something better than 74 on Friday and shot 74. Aaron Badley, this one's brutal. Not quite as bad as the Chappell. Scott Stallings just played terrible on Friday, so that's why that one's bad. But Aaron Badley missed a 2-foot 9-inch putt to miss on the number. Oh, brutal. Sung Jae missed a 9-footer. Couldn't get up and down from 35 feet on 18. Bubba missed a 4-foot 8-inch putt to miss on the number. Oh, man. Brutal. Tons of ownership right there in just Sung Jae and Bubba. And why not throw in Jason Day, who couldn't get up and down from 41 feet, missed a 9-footer and shot 76 on Friday to miss by 1. Russell Knox, just 2 more now. I told you we had a lot this week. Russell Knox battled all day to get to the number, only to fail around the green on 18, not getting up and down from 44 feet, and thus missed the cut. So just some incredibly great content there. It just makes itself, obviously. We spent about 5 minutes on there, so some really good stuff there, so I don't think we need to do anything on the good side. A couple of guys made birdie on 18 and 9 to make it, but those are expected to happen a couple of times. Taylor Gooch is one of those guys who birdied, I think, the last 2 to get inside, and now he's inside the top 10 to finish it out. So, all right, let's move on to this week. As we wrap up last week, we went over the statistical stuff before the Not Your Average Miss cut this week. it's something I'm going to try and do. I just like the flow of it a little bit better. I like to end on some funny stuff, and I guess the cut sweats are funny stuff looking back at it now, but certainly Joaquin Neiman destroyed a bunch of good lines, and I'm sure Justin Thomas and others did as well. But at least now, hopefully, we can look back on it and laugh. All right, so let's turn our attention to the WGC Mexico and the Puerto Rico Opens of this week. As I mentioned off the top, it is a dual tournament week. Most of the focus, however, will be on the WGC Mexico. That's where FanDuel will put out their contest. That's where the secondary DFS sites like Super Draft, Fantasy Draft, that's where they will focus their contests on as well. While DraftKings will give us a Puerto Rico Open contest. And typically, Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic have been pretty good contests for a secondary. Bigger than most European Tour events. So that should give us a little bit of variety, and we will cover that, and maybe not to the extent that we cover a normal PGA event, because that's what we'll be doing for WGC Mexico, but certainly we'll provide at least some content, probably similar to a European Tour event. I think that's probably a good way to look at it. Okay, so let's learn about the WGC Mexico first. It's played at Golf de Chapultepec. Golf de Chapultepec is a par 71, 7,300 yards. However, the 7,300 yard is rarely played at 20% less, somewhere between 15 and 20% less. Because remember, Mexico City, where the WGC Mexico and Golf de Chapultepec is at about 8,000 feet above sea level. So the elevation is quite significant, 15 to 20% less on most shots that caddies will have to account for. They'll be quite busy this week. So it really plays, I would say, around 6,500 yards, somewhere in that range. At least the real yardage in terms of that, okay? Par 3s are played 236, 200, 192, and 166. The par 4s are played at 471, 434, 434, 408, 433. Actually, I'm sorry. That is, I apologize. I'm going to start that segment over if you guys don't mind. I just noticed that was on my notes from the previous week. I forgot to do a little copy and paste on the new stuff. I apologize there. So let's start over. The par 3s are 186, 235, 225, 172. And the par 4s on at least the front side are 316, which is the first. This is why I stopped. The first two holes are actually both drivable par 4s. First one is 316 yards, most guys. It plays similar to Riviera, number 10, so it's nice that we're going from Riviera straight to Golf de Chapultepec. Golfers that played in both events will be used to the first hole or a similar layout. The second hole is also drivable. I know it's a 387-yard par 4, but there's an angle that cuts off about 20 or 30 yards. We saw 5 eagles last year on it, so definitely drivable. Then it goes 445, 525, and 382 for the front side, 450, 406, 497, 403, and 388 on the backside. The par 5s now, 622, 622, and 575. So the ones on the front side, obviously they're going to play different. I'm sorry, it's a 625 on the front, a 622 on the back, followed by a 575 on the back. So those two 600-plus yarders play very similar in yardage, obviously, but they can stretch it out and use different tees and all of that fun stuff. So, all right, who's here to play? WGCs are always different in terms of the makeup of the field. The top 50 players in the official World Golf Ranking through February 10th, so that's right after the AT&T Pebble Beach, which is why Jordan Spieth was end up qualifying for this event. He got inside of it after the top 10. Top 30 on prior seasons FedEx Cup point list. The prior year European Tour Order of Merit. So I believe the top 20 get in there. The European Tour Order of Merit through 210. So that's, I believe, the top 5 guys or 6 guys that have not qualified through the other qualifications. Prior year Japan Golf Tour Order of Merit, 2 golfers. The top 2 players from the Australian Asian Tour Order of Merit. The top 2 from the Sunshine Tour. The top 2 from the Asia PGA Tour. And then, lastly, the highest ranked available player from Mexico on the OWGR through 2/10, so February 10th, that has not already qualified through one of the above means. So that actually gets Carlos Ortiz in the field, while Abraham Answer got in through a couple of other various ways. So Carlos Ortiz is the second Mexican in the field. So I just mentioned a couple of guys, Carlos Ortiz and Abraham Answer, but who else is here through those qualifications? Well, 55 of the world's top 100 are here to play, so a fantastic field. 9 of the top 10 in the world are here, so just a phenomenal field this week, obviously, again for the second straight week. That is absolutely no surprise there. All right, let's go into the DraftKings prices, and then I'm going to go into the stats for the week, where I've actually done something a little bit different, hopefully give you a little bit more information, also talk about it with Matt on Monday night, or for you guys maybe Tuesday morning, whenever you listen to it. So Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR will be joining me again to Stats with Matt. I'm going to be calling that segment from now on. So, okay, before we go into that, though, let's go into my prices for the week. Obviously, when you get Rory, Rahm, JT, DJ in the field, those guys are obviously going to be the all high priced. However, I'm going to go Rory number 1. There's no question that's what's going to happen. I'm going to slide. I'm going to go Rahm number 2 again, since he did make the cut last week. So I'm going to go Rory at 11.8 this week, maybe 11.9, maybe 12K. You know, I'm going to say 12K. I'm going to go out there on a limb and say 12K. It's a WGC event. There's only 70 guys. I'm going to say 12K for Rory. I'm going to go 11.4 for Rahm. I'm going to go 11.1 for DJ, coming off that strong start. And then I'm going to go 10.8 for Thomas. And then I'm going to go 10.6 for Webb. And then we're going to have a little bit of a drop down. But I think that they slide Xander back up into the 10. So I'm going to go Xander at 10.1. No Tiger this week. They'd put him there. They probably wouldn't put Brooks there, I'd be completely honest with you. But, I mean, I guess Hideki Matsuyama could be up there. Okay, let's just stick with the 5 that I know are going to be up there. I think that's a pretty good bet for me. Xander, I'm not quite ready to put back up there, and Bubba coming off the missed cut, I'm not ready to. So, okay, start over. Rory, 12. Rahm, 11.4. DJ, 11.1. Thomas, 10.9. And Webb, 10.5. And then a drop of $600 to either Matsuyama or Xander, one of those two. So, that's what I'm going with for the week. I have it written down here. I've got Rory at the 12 figure. One of the first price tags we'll see of that this year. Rahm has just been so consistent and pretty highly owned above the 11, so I'm sure they'll keep him there. DJ has won this tournament twice. We know DraftKings loves course history, so 11.1. JT coming off the missed cut. He'll be in the high to mid-8s at 10.6. And then Webb coming off of his win will be somewhere in the low to mid-5, 10. So I'll say 10.4 for Webb. All right, so now we're going to move on to the statistics for the week, where I'm going to spend just a couple of more minutes where I normally do. And, of course, this pod is going to also be a little bit longer since it is a dual tournament. I'm going to give you a quick preview of the Puerto Rico Open as well after this. Couple of stats, maybe a little bit who's in the field, and so on. So, okay, in this statistical notion, Matt and I talk a lot about proximity. And we talk a lot about the approach distances that we expect most of the golfers to be hitting in, and Matt, of course, has the expected birdies. So what I've gone ahead and done is gone and gotten last year's data for each of the approach statistics points that I follow, which is under 125 yards, 125 to 150, 150 to 175, 175 to 200, and 200 plus. So, of course, each and every week, these numbers will change. So don't always think that it's always going to be under 125 and 200. It's certainly not going to be. But this week, it is. So when I review the data from last week, last year, 125 yards or under. Bubba Watson had 42 attempts. 42 of 72 approach shots for Bubba Watson came under 125. That is absolutely insane. Justin Thomas had 37. Westwood and Mickelson had 35. Maybe two golfers to take a look at, playing pretty good this year. And then next, Koepka, Cantlay, Rahm, Spieth, Eric Van Rooyen, Brandon Grace, Gary Woodland, Dustin Johnson, Aaron Wise, Thorbjorn Olesen, who will not be here this year, and Tony Finau all had more than 30, and the least was 18. So at least one quarter of the golf shots, the approach shots, sorry, not the golf shots, the approach shots will be coming from under 125 yards. Next category, 125 to 150. So sorry, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the most, give you some stats about each statistic, and then the least. So the most was 17 in the 125 to 150 by Kisner and Kazire. Sean Norris and Ryan Fox had also 16. The least was 4. 150 to 175, the most was Charles Howell and Ty Hatton, who had 19. The least was Bubba Watson with 5. 175 to 200 goes to, most was 16 for Rafa Cabrera Bello, and the least was 4 by Sean Norris and Patrick Cantlay. And the last one, the 200 plus, most was 20 by Matthew Millar, while the least being 9 by Haotong Li. So after further review, we can see that under 125 yards is so big here, especially with that elevation change. It's going to feel like even more wedges being hit. When we see the least number of guys, the least number of approach shots coming from this range being 18, we know that certainly that it's very important. The next important, I would say, is 200 plus. However, you can't really look at 200 plus this week being the same 200 plus because a 4-iron normally from 220 yards will be a 6-iron this week. So maybe a little tough to peg. I wanted to bring this segment up now because going forward, it's what I'll use for here. Add a couple of minutes to the pod. But this week, it's a little bit different. And I'll try and talk about that with Matt tomorrow night on the pod. Okay. Let's move our attention now to, this is normally where I'd end the pod if this is your first time joining me on the opening tee. But since it's a dual tournament week, what happens to the PGA Tour whenever there is a WGC event, the PGA Tour puts out an alternate field event where you see some of the younger stars that aren't quite in the top 50 in the world come to, or people that need some starts. And we've got a few here this week. So it is played at Cocoa Beach and Golf and Country Club. It's a par 72, 7,500 yards or just over. The field is a normal PGA Tour field event. Tournament winners from last year, career money exemption, sponsor exemption. Ton of those this week. Past champions, ton of those this week. Only a couple on the top 125 FedEx Cup list from last year. Not too many at least. And then major medical. Then, of course, the Korn Ferries. The 125 to 150 category from the FedEx last year, which is one of the only tournaments those guys get in, especially the beyond 150 category, which is next, and then, of course, Monday qualifiers. So who makes up that field? It's 17 golfers in the top 200 in the world are here to compete. Not bad. Scheduled right now says Ian Poulter at number 50 in the world, or very close, is scheduled to be the top headliner. But I think he might end up getting an invite to Mexico. I'm not sure, based on how many people withdrew, Cantlay and the alike. So Ian Poulter might get an invite to Mexico. Tom Lewis at number 52 is kind of on that same boat as well. So I guess I'm not surprised to see both of those guys' names on the entry list for Puerto Rico, hoping that they'll get an invite based on standing in the OWGR for Mexico. And if they don't, either Poulter will withdraw, but Tom Lewis, on the other hand, needs a start on the PGA Tour, needs to get some FedEx Cup points, and is way down on that priority ranking. So he needs a start regardless of where he plays. Next is Alex Noren at 86, Andrea Pavon at 87 official world golf ranking, and then the last two in the top 100 is Lucas Beauregard at 94 and Victor Hovland at 98. So Victor Hovland is needing to take the approach that some of the other younger stars on the PGA Tour have done. They have gone down to Puerto Rico, so most notably is Bryson DeChambeau, came in second here a couple of years ago to D8 points. Jordan Spieth came here a couple of years ago as well when he first started, and I believe he won the tournament, or came in the top 10, something like that. So plenty of young golfers have come down here, young stars have come down here needing to play, needing to get some FedEx Cup points. So that's the case for Viktor Hovland this week. The previous winners of the event, Martin Traynor in 2019 at minus 15. D.A. Points in 2017 at minus 20. 2016 was won by Tony Finau, his only win on the PGA Tour at minus 12. 2015, Alex Jecka at minus 7. So stats for the week as I round up the Opening Tee podcast is we've seen the young stars. I've just mentioned we've seen the young stars come here and play well. So I'm going to take talent. Talent is an important stat for this week. If we know a golfer has extremely good prospects of being a good golfer and is young right now, take a look at them. Cameron Davis is in the field this week and having a very good year. A young golfer, Viktor Hovland, I already mentioned. So take a look at those guys that we know have had a good pedigree. We've seen them always place well. Not necessarily win, but place well here. Next, par 5 scoring, very important. 42% of the DraftKings points are coming from the 4 par 5s this week. So take a look at par 5 scoring, and I will certainly be chatting about that with Matt tomorrow night. So until then, everybody, thanks for coming by and stopping by the Opening Tee podcast. This week, about 25 minutes as I added in that one statistical segment. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and we'll get a little bit more out of it in terms of what we are searching for type of golfers that fit the course. So until you guys join me for the Shot 3 from the Tee podcast, I will sign off. And of course, thanks to SuperDraft for sponsoring all of our audio and video golf content right now. If you haven't checked them out, please do so. It's a lot of fun. I've had some pretty good success here in the first 2 weeks doing it. Their multiplier effect, it creates a whole new strategy in terms of rostering guys. You pick any 6 you want. If you haven't done it yet, you pick any 6 you want, but every golfer has a different multiplier, so a new strategy to take a look at. So until next time, and until the Shot 3 from the Tee, everybody, I'll be signing off now, and thanks for joining. Cheers.